Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is James Reed, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Initiatives and Business Growth Strategies here at the Urban Redevelopment Authority of Pittsburgh. I'm joined this morning by Lindsay Bennett of KIZ Resources and Johnna Pro of DECD, and we're here this morning to talk to you about the Enterprise Zone tax credit. Some key dates to remember as we're going into this: the applications are open. They opened April 4th, and they are due May 31st. And if you are interested after you gone through this webinar, please reach out to myself and Lindsay. Our email addresses are listed below. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay, who will take us through the tax credit presentation.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you for hosting this again. This has been, make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. A couple years now that we've been able to do this and have a presentation on these tax credits and kind of help work through the process of these programs. So as James said, I'm Lindsay Bennett. I'm with KIZ Resources. We're located out of Altoona, Pennsylvania. So right in the middle of the state, but still within the 12 county region of the southwest part of Pennsylvania here. And we're going to talk about today, there's an alphabet soup. Let me advance my slides here, if you will. There we go. An alphabet soup there of programs, which we're not going to go over, but Pennsylvania has historically been kind of switching from grant programs to more to have tax credit programs. And that started back in 2003, really, with the start of the Keystone Innovation Zone program. And at that time, the research and development program, which had been around for a while, but they started making them transferable. So these transferable tax credits are a way to get cash into a company without it being, grant dollars, written checks from the state, because the tax credits, if they're not able to be used against your PA tax liability, you can sell them to another PA tax payer and actually receive funds that you can use towards your project or towards your further development, hiring employees, whatever it may be. But today we're going to focus on the Neighborhood Assistance Program, which is all encompassing of several different components. There's 5 components amongst the Neighborhood Assistance Program. It was established through the Community Service Office at DECD and is administered there to help them invest in distressed neighborhoods and communities, to provide assistance for nonprofits as well as for-profit businesses that are investing in their communities. The biggest component is that they want to help low-income populations, whether it's through services that are needed, through workforce development programs, through blight removal or renovation of buildings, and job training, affordable housing, even crime prevention. And then also there's a charitable food component. So because it's to benefit low-income populations, you can't displace any residents during the project. That's one of the things that in the past they've had you provide a statement for, and we're going to get into more of what's required with the application. For this year, they're looking at just a checkbox that you agree you're absolutely not going to displace residents from the neighborhood. Another special focus that they've added over the last few years is they are giving some higher priority to projects that are focused on certain pandemic relief efforts, economic recovery efforts, as well as improving social justice issues within the communities. So if you have a project that has some of those key components there, you could get preferential priority as they're scoring the applications going forward. But it's at DCED's discretion as they're looking at your project, and using words like COVID-19 and things like that aren't going to just automatically get you there. You have to be doing something that's really working towards those relief efforts. So these are the 5 general programs, and I'm not going to take a lot of time on the first 4, but I just want everybody to be aware there's 36 million available in this program, and that sounds like a lot, but you're servicing the entire state and you're servicing 5 different programs, 4 of them being for nonprofit organizations. The first one, just the regular neighborhood assistance program, is for 1-year projects that a nonprofit has. And it provides a 55% tax credit to the donors of the project. The second program is called Special Program Priorities. It's again for a 1-year project that a nonprofit is doing, but it's for very specific things that the state really feels needs to be developed further, or issues that are of greater need throughout the state. So they could be things, again, like the disaster or economic recovery, weatherization projects, or different housing rehab for distressed areas, blight elimination, diversity issues, veterans initiatives, even rural initiatives. If you're going to help with getting programs out to more rural communities that are typically underserved in some way, you could qualify under the special program priorities. And the biggest benefit of getting that designation is that your donors are now not just receiving a 55% tax credit, they're getting a 75% tax credit for that donation. So that's very attractive to a donor who might already be giving to an organization, to give them more, or to be a first-time donor for a project. The next one is the Neighborhood Partnership Program. That is really a strategic 5+ year plan that an organization has, where you're partnering with some of the, like a private-public partnership kind of thing. You're partnering with other community members and have a long-term strategic plan or initiative that you're going to be doing over the course of 5 years. With that, it's also a 75% tax credit per year for the donor, but the donors have to give a minimum of $50,000 every year for their donation, and you can't change donors throughout that program. So it's a long-term, it's a strategic plan to really grow and solve issues that a community might have. The fourth one there is the Charitable Food Program, which is a 55% tax credit, again, for 1-year projects that are specifically related to relieving hunger, food insecurity, food shortages. And as you can imagine, the last couple of years, we've seen more of that, I think, and a lot of efforts going there. So this works with food banks as well as other organizations who are taking on helping to provide relief efforts towards food insecurity. And then the last one is the Enterprise Zone Program. So this one is the only one where a for-profit does the initial application, and all the other ones, the nonprofit does the application, and the for-profits are providing commitment letters for their donations. But the Enterprise Zone tax credit is for-profit businesses, whether it's you're renovating a building for your own business to move into, or your own business that's there, you need to make modifications. Maybe you're adding a new you're a manufacturer and adding a new product line or manufacturing line. If it's located within one of the zones, you could qualify, or it could be a developer. And the credit is worth 25% of the hard costs and direct soft costs into the building project. Can include acquisition if it falls within the contract year for the program. And it is capped at 500,000, but we'll get into more of the details here as we go. So again, just really quick, and I did kind of mention this for the nonprofits, this is for project specific. Each year you have to fill out this application. The nonprofit for those first 4 programs, they complete the single application. They're outlining the place, the community that they're serving, the problem, what they're trying to solve, what the issues are, their project. So this is not just a funding program to support operations each year that you get to apply just for your regular operations. It's for project specific. So what you're accomplishing that year, and then telling them what the goals are, what your proposed outcomes are. The best way to have a successful application as a nonprofit is to get the businesses, your local supporters to write these letters of commitment stating that their goal or their plan is to provide a $10,000 donation. Please support them and award them an allocation of tax credits for this project. It's also good to get letters of support from other community members to show how this need that you're filling is viable and needs to be met. The one extra thing, so James had already alluded to that the application process is due by May 31st. For nonprofits, if you don't have all of your commitment letters in by May 31st, and it's best if you do, but if you don't, you can provide a comprehensive plan of how you're going to solicit the rest of the donations you need for your project. So what you need to do is kind of have key donors highlighted in there, what you expect to get from them. And then you can provide your final list of donors, your final commitment letters by August 1st. All of the donors have to be tax compliant with the state. So they have to fill in by that August 1st date the compliance form that goes to the Department of Revenue. And it's an online form. I don't know, I should have put that link in here. I'll have to remember that for the next time I do this seminar of where that compliance form is. So they have to have that done and filled in. Anybody receiving tax credits in the state, no matter what type of tax credit it is, has to be tax compliant with the Department of Revenue. And then the donations themselves, they can be given anytime from July 1st, 2022, which most people are not going to give before they get the approval letter. So it'll probably be after you get your approval in the fall through June 30th. The donations have to be given by the end of the contract year of July 1st to June 30th, 2023. Once the donation is made, then that business is going to submit their application. So what you will receive from the state, an application for the tax credit certificate to be issued to you, where you provide your EIN and contact information. The business submits that to the state to get their actual certificate, whether it's for a 55% tax credit or 75% tax credit based on your program you're providing. And then the nonprofits actually have a 15-month cycle to be able to use the funds. They have to through September 30th, 2023 in this current year to use the funds for their project. And then they have 3 more months to provide all the closeout information and show that the goals were met. So if there's any questions, please put them in the chat, and James, feel free to interrupt if anything comes in as I'm going, but that's kind of an overview of the nonprofit process. So if you work with a nonprofit or have specific questions, or of an organization that would be interested, please reach out to us or reach out to Johnna directly on your project.
Lindsay, this is Johnna. Let me jump in here.
Absolutely.
Back up one page. Go ahead. Back up.
Yeah.
I will just say this for the nonprofits on the line, or for any company that is investing in a nonprofit project. Although the guidelines do allow for a solicitation plan, in the Southwest, we recommend that any nonprofit coming in with a project have their funders lined up by the May 31st deadline. It is incredibly competitive in the Southwest. We do it better than anybody else across the Commonwealth. If you come in with a project and you don't have your funders secured, you are not going to be very competitive in this process. So again, while the guidelines allow for a solicitation plan, it is not recommended.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. It is definitely easier to get behind a project that they know is going to happen because the donors are already there versus, the nonprofit having to spend the first several months of the program year still trying to find their donors. So that's a very good point.
And Lindsay, before you go on, we do have one question in the chat. I would love more information on the nonprofit. I work with a few and I believe they would be interested. So what's the best way for folks to move forward? Should they contact you? Should they visit DECD's website? What are you thinking there?
Sure. So they can contact myself or Johnna. The guidelines are posted on DECD's website. If you go to, DCED.pa.org. Is that right? I think
Let me
that's
see.
right.
I'm going to see if I can. I'm going to see if I can put the link.
Or
in the
not
chat.
org, .gov. It's not definitely not .org. I'm sorry, DCD.pa.gov, I believe it is, and just search in the search bar for NAP. You'll pull up the program page there and can download the guidelines. If you email myself, I'm happy to share the guidelines and kind of help give you some guidance on how to go through that application process.
Let me jump in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can get those guidelines posted here. Truly, the person folks need to talk to is me, right? They need to reach out to me. Johnna Pro, the regional director. I need to know about all projects before they are submitted. So nonprofits need to talk to me. My number is 412-565-5098. And my email is joepro@pa.gov. And I'll put those in the chat for folks along with the link.
Perfect. Yeah, Johnna, for any of these programs, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, Johnna, or if you're outside of the 12 county Southwest region, whoever your regional director is, you have to have a meeting with them. They need to understand what your project is. The regional directors are really your advocate and cheerleader for the folks in Harrisburg that are reviewing all of these applications. And they need to know what the project is, but so that they can share the information and be able to advocate for you and support your project. Is there any other questions at this time, or are we ready to move on to the enterprise zone, the keynote ones?
That's it for the questions right now. I just want to note for the attendees, Johnna just did put her contact information as well as the website link into the chat. So please go ahead and refer to that and save that information.
Thank you, Johnna, for providing that. Okay, so with the enterprise zone, so this is kind of the fifth one. And a lot of times the nonprofits, especially the ones that have those 5-year plan and commitments, they do end up getting a bit large chunk of the allocation of that 36 million first. But the enterprise zone is just really a cool program because it does allow companies and businesses to participate in a way that really supports their communities. So it's awarded for just distressed areas that have been designated in certain ways. So it can be an actual designated enterprise zone, which Pittsburgh does have, of course, and the URA is the region, or is the coordinator for the Pittsburgh Enterprise Zone, which there's a new map coming out, right, James, for that very soon. So if you're unsure if you're in an enterprise zone or in a Main Street or Keystone Community designation, please reach out to myself or to Johnna or to James and try to and provide your address. We can see if you're there. So it does have to be a designated space. It can't just be any distressed community for the EZP portion. So the private companies, they do have to be tax compliant. Again, I had mentioned that for the for-profits. So when you're filling out the applications, you do have to provide your compliance form online through the Department of Revenue for the company, and as well as any owners that have over 20% ownership, they also have to be tax compliant in order for your organization to receive a tax credit. So just something to be aware of. If you have access to either eTides or MyPath, or if you don't, maybe it might be a good time for you to work on getting connected there with the Department of Revenue, so you can look at your account and make sure that all taxes are filed and paid. But really, it's for for-profit companies, and it can be across many different industries. There's been manufacturing projects, there's mixed use projects, there's just developers who are putting in office spaces. It's really a broad number of types of industries that this program can reach. Approved projects are eligible to receive a tax credit of 25% of your qualifying costs, and it is up to a $500,000 tax credit. So a 2 million or more project would max that out, and that would be your ask at that point. So if it's a $1 million project, you're asking for $250,000. But again, this is a competitive program. So if there are years where they are oversubscribed, as what happened last year, the state may at their discretion choose to try and reach more projects by prorating down the allocation per project. So it could be, that you'll receive, if you ask for the 500,000, that you'll receive 250 or you'll receive 350, depending on the given year and the number of applications. It's a very competitive process. The eligible activities are the rehabilitation, expansion of a building land and improvements, all of the hard costs that go into that, as well as architectural design costs, acquisition, all of those things count towards eligible expenses for the program. And
Lindsay, let me jump in really quickly.
Absolutely.
Since you mentioned the map earlier,
Mhm.
when we get to the end of the presentation, I will pull up the URA's map so you can have a good sense of if you are located in an enterprise zone. And then you can always feel free to get in touch with me, and we can have additional conversations about it. But I will give a walkthrough of how to access the URA's tax incentive map and how to select the filter with, for the enterprise zone.
Perfect. So part of the component for this is not only are you doing this project within a distressed community designated either, like I said, as a Keystone Communities, a Main Street program, or an enterprise zone designation, is they really want to see how you're supporting the low income community and the low income individuals and families that are there. So employment opportunities for low income individuals has always been a higher priority when they're scoring these projects. So anytime that you are providing jobs by your building being completed is extremely beneficial and helpful. And they really want you to expand upon what that's like. They want to know that it's, full-time equivalent, it's a family sustaining wage, it has benefits. Is there training? Will the training be available there? Is it entry level for anybody to be able to apply to? Really flesh out what those jobs are going to be and how they're going to be available and accessible to the local community. Part of the application is completing the single application for assistance online, which is an electronic system that DCED has for all of their projects. On that, as well as in a narrative, you are going to address the same things that the nonprofits are. You're going to describe your place, your neighborhood, your community that you are serving, the main problems that are being addressed there. What are the issues that your project is going to help? What is your project? Describe what's being built, what's being completed, what type of jobs they're going to be available. If there's housing, what kind of housing is going to be available? And then your proposed outcomes, your goals. So how many jobs are going to be created? Are you removing a blighted building and putting, a new beautiful facade? Is it going to be a safer block for the neighborhood with better street lighting? All of those little things that are community minded, you want to keep, include in there during your narrative. The application, as we know, is due by May 31st. There is no extension to that at all. We recommend that. So that is May 31st is a Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. So my recommendation is try to get it done before that weekend. At the end of the application cycle, that sometimes the system can get bogged down. It is an online system, so getting it done early is always better. That way that you don't experience a technical issue and for some reason not be able to get it in until June 1st, and then you're out of luck, basically. The project is for the state's fiscal year of July 1st through 2022 through June 30th, 2023. But companies, again, have that 15-month completion timeframe to complete their project. So you have until September 30th, 2023 to expend, what you said you were going to expend from your budget and receive the credits then. there have been, and especially in the last couple of years, which anytime there's a construction-based project, there can always be delays, of course, but COVID-19 really provided a lot of delays on a lot of projects. So the state within the guidelines, they don't love to have to give extensions, but especially lately, it's been understandable when there have been a need for extensions to be granted, but they cannot give you an extension beyond 1 year. So if you do need, extra time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, or up to a year, they may be willing to grant you that extra time to complete your project. Once they've committed and invested in your project, the state really wants to see it through to completion. But we really are trying to get applications that are going to be done by September 30th, 2023 to be in this round. Because if your project's going to be, pushed into the next fiscal year, really you could be in the next round for applications. And Johnna, feel free to jump in, or James, if you guys have any comments or questions on any of that.
We do
Yes,
have.
Lindsay.
I was just going to say we have one question in the chat, and maybe we can take this now. Are projects awarded easy tax credits required to use prevailing wage?
No, there's no requirement for prevailing wage, or they actually addressed that in the guidelines this year specifically, that it is not required for the construction.
And Johnna, I'm sorry I cut you off.
That's quite all right. Yes, we really do want projects that are ready to go. And I will give you an example. And in fact, it happened in the city of Pittsburgh. We had a great project a couple of years ago. URA was very supportive of the project. The gentleman doing the project was sort of new to development, but he was confident. We liked what he proposed to us, but just based on some of what he needed in terms of permit, getting some additional financing, we just felt that he wasn't ready to come in with an application. And, we worked it up until about the last minute. And finally we said, you know what, this really is not a good time for you to come in. And I think he was a little bit disappointed, but he came back in last year and his project went right through. Because at that point, he had everything, it was ready to go. There had been some delays on financing, delays on permitting. So had we allowed him to come in the previous year, that project would have just fallen apart, right? So encouraging him to wait till the following round was certainly the better route to go, because he was able to put in a really complete application. Certainly I had been hearing about it for over a year. It looked really good, and we had no problem getting that approved. So sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. The program comes around every year. And while folks are always optimistic, I do this every day. These projects do not happen quickly. So it's best to be honest with yourself, with the folks at the URA, with Lindsay, if you're working with her, and certainly with me. Because I want to see projects that go through. I want to see projects that go through, right? So
yeah, and Johnna is such a good advocate and for your project. So the more details you can provide, she can give you that good advice of, well, do you have this component? You need this component. She's very good at being available and providing that information.
Right. And I just want to chime in to second that. I've seen a lot of projects, whether it be, coming into the URA looking for business financing or coming in looking for real estate development. A lot of times projects are delayed for reasons that are beyond anyone's immediate control. And so, with these sorts of programs, making sure that you have a decent understanding of what your timeline is and how realistic it might be, that's really the better part to making sure that we're aligning correctly and choosing the resources that are going to come into your project at the right time so that you can secure them and deliver the impact for your project that they really want. So like Johnna said, please contact her with your project ideas. Please contact me with your project ideas. We definitely want to, make sure that we can be of service to you all, and that, if you have a project that's ready to go, that we can get it in. But if the project's not quite ripe, there's often time to come back the next year.
Well, and in addition to that, make sure on your end, the complexity and the scope of your project. I had an enterprise zone project in our Mid-Mon Valley zone a couple of years ago. Fantastic project. We had no problem getting it approved, but it involved the renovation of a restaurant, an addition of a patio space, and then a third new building constructed for axe throwing. The applicant came in with that as the whole project, which was fine. It was fine, but he ended up being delayed in terms of building the axe throwing portion of the project that pushed him into another state budget year. So technically, he could have come in for enterprise zone tax credits twice. He could have come in the 1920 year and in the 2021 year. And that was partially his fault and partially my fault. I could only go by what he was telling me. But, that a piece of that project got delayed so long that he could have taken 2 bites at the apple instead of getting 1 bite at the apple. So again, make sure you have a good understanding of what your project is. There may be an ability to come in at this twice rather than just once.
And that
how the project is going to play out.
Right. And also based on the building itself, the deed, am I correct, Johnna, you can get the 500,000 up to the 500,000 one time for one building. And you can't go back and ask for more money in that same building. If you're doing an addition or you're doing a second project in a different building, then you can come back again. Am I correct in that?
You are correct. So in this case, again, it was a restaurant. Then next to that restaurant was a patio. Then next to the patio was a whole separate addition, which was an axe throwing facility. So rather than doing that as one singular project, we probably should have broken it up into 2. And he could have come at it twice.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
Make sure you have a clear understanding of your own project.
And it allows yourself to have the time to complete, one thing and then the next thing when you're able to do it that way.
And before we move on, we do have a question in the chat. I think all 3 of us will have a little bit of input here. But the question is, does the URA only help projects in the city? And so, yes, that would be for the URA. However, if you're outside the city, and Lindsay and Johnna, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but you could certainly work with Johnna and Lindsay on your project, and they would help you identify the right sort of, I forget what the correct term is, but the right sponsor or reviewing entity.
Correct. If you are working on an enterprise zone project in the city URA oversees that enterprise zone. If you are in Beaver County, there is an enterprise zone there. The Beaver County Corporation for Economic Development oversees that enterprise zone. If you are down in the Mid-Mon Valley, which is to say the 35 communities between the Elizabeth Bridge and Brownsville, that is the Mon Valley Alliance that oversees that enterprise zone. And if you're up in the Altoona area, it's the ABCD Corporation. Those are the 4 designated enterprise zones that we have, where if you're doing projects, you would need to work with those agencies along with myself to push those projects forward.
And that's for Johnna's 12 county region. So if you're a nonprofit and you're in any other distressed community and you can prove the need for your community and neighborhood, even if it's not one of those 4 designated, you would still work with Johnna for your project. And then if you're more north towards, the northwest side, there's a regional coordinator for each segment. There is it's divided into 5 or 6 regional.
Yeah, there's 6
community.
reasons. I don't want people to get mixed up. If we're only talking about the enterprise zone projects right now. These are projects done by private companies.
Yeah, so
Whether
there's
you are
designated zones.
Yeah, that's the designated zones. If we're talking about any of the nonprofit things under the neighborhood assistance program, that's just me, flat out.
Yes.
In our region. Okay, but for the enterprise zone projects, you must get support from your enterprise zone coordinator, and those 4 are Pittsburgh, Beaver County, the Mid-Mon Valley, and Altoona.
Yep, perfect. So I'm going to go into some of the application requirements. The first, this is available on the on DCED's guidelines as well. They have these listed out, what you need to provide as supplemental. So yes, you're going to fill in the single application for assistance, where it's going to ask for a minimum of 100, but no more than 1,000 character description of what you're using the funds for, your project, your place, your program measures, those types of things. It's going to ask you to put in your budget on that. But supplemental to that, these are some of the components that you do need to include. The first one is a zoning compliance letter. So you can get that whether if it's with the city, you get it with the city of Pittsburgh, and they'll write a letter. They need to be familiar with your project to know that what you're proposed to do adheres to the zoning regulation for that parcel number or community or neighborhood. So you don't necessarily have to have permits in place, but you need to at least have that letter that states that you are your project is in compliance with the zoning. You do need to provide cost estimates. So a lot of people provide, a sources and uses, but it's best if you also provide hard cost estimates from your local contractor, whoever you're going to use. And if you aren't sure, if you get a couple of quotes from a few different contractors, that's fine. But you do want to have those cost estimates to support your sources and uses. And while we're on that, just to kind of talk briefly about eligible versus ineligible sources. So any source of funding, to pay for your project that is private equity. Of course, that's going to count. Any private loans, that is definitely going to count as well. Where you have to kind of eliminate some of your sources would be any grant programs at all. If you're receiving a grant for a portion of your project, those expenses in that part of the project wouldn't be eligible additionally for a tax credit. As well as other state funding. There's certain state type loans that are ineligible, and that's all listed in the guidelines specifically, as well as some federal programs, like if you're also getting federal historic tax credits or federal low-income housing tax credits, the portion that you're kind of getting, the tax credit portion that you're getting back for that would be an ineligible source of fund. Eligible costs are, again, all of those hard costs: acquisition, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, anything for, sprinkler systems or other fire safety measures, all of the actual build out, roofing, landscaping things, some demolition costs, as well as those soft costs like the architectural, the design, any fees or permitting fees, some interest, I believe, even not interest, I'm sorry, insurance was the word I was thinking of, insurance that you need to get for the project, for the building project. So there's a budget justification that needs to be completed, supplemental from your sources and uses and your cost estimates as the backup support. The budget justification just puts everything in very clear categories for the state so that they can track, that where your eligible sources are or uses are. And it's all, kind of very standard then. So there is a budget justification that needs to be completed as part of that. The third thing there, of course, is your evidence of your property ownership. So if the deed, or if you are in the process of purchasing a sale agreement for the project, They do allow for tenant improvements as well. If your building is in an enterprise zone and you're going to be doing the improvements as the tenant, you need to provide your rental agreement that shows that you are allowed to make those improvements. You have, a long-term lease in the space to be able to do that. Any other proposed subcontractual agreements they want to see, that would be if you already, have people in line to do work for you, as well as if you aren't going to, maintain ownership of the property, but you're going to be leasing it to other tenants. They do want to see those tenant leases. That's going to support the job creation and the proof of what you're going to be using the building for. The next thing is to provide an applicant profile. So within your narrative where you're addressing your place and your problem, you do want to provide some information, some background information as on the applicant, how you're committed to the working with the community, but you also need to provide and supplement to that is your most recent financial statements. So tax returns for the company that is going to be doing the project, profit and loss statements or balance sheets. Typically balance sheets are one of a good thing to provide, especially if you're trying to show that you're funding it through equity. You need to be able to provide those types of financials.
Lindsay,
yeah, go ahead.
Lindsay, just want to jump in really quick with the time check. We have about 15 minutes left.
Sure. Okay. So quickly moving forward here through this list, you do need to have documentation that the investment is secured. So you need a bank commitment letter to prove if you're funding it through loans or through that equity with those financials. The local zone coordinator letter of support, that's what we were just talking about. So you know where your project is and who you need to go to for that. And if you don't know, your regional director can direct you there. Also, for projects that are asking for more than $250,000 in tax credits, so $1 million or more project, you will need to provide a projected cash flow analysis for your building project. Where are those dollars going to come to help you support and maintain the building, or be able to pay your debt service. And I'd alluded to this before. One of the things that they want to make sure is you're not displacing residents. That's now just a checkbox at the end of the application on a single application. And then the last thing there is to provide the number of jobs that are being created and the calculated cost per job. So that's based off of the tax credit that you're being awarded. And again, just be very specific on the types of jobs created. Applications again are due May 31st. You have until September 30th if you are awarded those credits to complete the project. And Johnna always alludes to this application process. The review process does take some time. Some of the nonprofits are gonna not provide their final donors commitment letters possibly until August. DECD is going to be reviewing these applications, and it'll be probably October, November timeframe when the actual award letters go out. And typically in the last couple of years, I've been seeing between like 5 and 8 million going towards the enterprise zone programs of that $36 million allocation. It just kind of ranges each year. Any other questions on the EZP, specifically what type of projects can be funded, or anything else, Johnna, that you want to share as people are preparing the narratives? Please include pictures of what your project's going to, what the current status is of the state of the building is, what your proposed project's going to look like, to really help support the narrative. Any other questions on EZP?
If we could, maybe let me go ahead and share my screen and bring up the map so folks can take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Okay, and while James is doing that, let me just kind of summarize very quickly again for everybody so we're all very clear. The Neighborhood Assistance Program is the umbrella name for this program. Under the Neighborhood Assistance Program, there are 4 opportunities for nonprofits to do projects which private companies invest in. That's the regular NAP, because we're state government and we name everything twice. So it's the regular NAP under the Neighborhood Assistance Program. It's the SPP, the Charitable Food, and the Long-Term Neighborhood Partnership Program. Those applicants are nonprofits. They secure investments from private companies to support their projects. Those companies then get tax credits. But what we're focused on here today is that fifth opportunity. This is the opportunity for private companies investing for themselves in enterprise zone projects that are located in enterprise zones. It's a 25% tax credit on an investment up to $2 million. Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody's a little bit clear, because it's very odd that the enterprise zone tax credit is under the NAP program. It gets a little confusing for folks. And again, just to be clear, although applications for all 5 of these programs are due at the end of May, the program itself opens on July 1 of the fiscal year. We will probably not make approvals until sometime in November or December. Frankly, we don't do this quickly. So as you're putting together your timeline on your enterprise zone project, keep that in mind, right? That if it involves, a complete construction, if we don't give you, if you don't hear from us until November or December, you're probably not doing any construction in January and February because of the winter weather. So just keep that in mind as you're laying out your time frame for projects. Okay.
And definitely don't start it before July 1 if you do need to start this summer. Hold off those costs as much as you can till July 1, because anything prior will not be eligible if you are approved.
Don't write any checks before July 1.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Johnna, for that clarification, and Lindsay for that additional insight. Okay, so right now I'm going to just kind of quickly take us through navigating from the URA's website how to get to that map that's going to show you whether or not you're in an enterprise zone. So I'm going to go back to our homepage, and from there, we're going to navigate over to services. We're going to click on financial assistance and resources. We're going to scroll down. We're going to go underneath businesses, and we're going to click learn more. We're going to scroll down. We're going to scroll down, and we're going to get to this explore Pittsburgh business incentive programs. We're going to click on that. It's going to load a new page. It's an ArcGIS map. We're going to go ahead and click explore development incentives in Pittsburgh. And then what we're going to do is we're going to navigate over to the layers, and we are going to, because the layers are already pre-populated, we're going to go through and we're just going to deselect some. I'm going to take out avenues of hope, investment areas, neighborhood business districts, and I'm just going to focus on Keystone Communities Enterprise Zone. So this is the layer that you want to come to that's going to show you what that territory is for the EZ area. And so as you can see, I'll zoom in a little bit. The area is pretty large. It encompasses a lot of the city. We have some on the north side, Manchester, Chateau, Deutschtown-ish, a little bit, Troy Hill area. You'll see Lawrenceville, the Strip District downtown, parts of the Lower Hill and Uptown, really coming down over to 2nd Avenue. So, PTC, or the Pittsburgh Technology Center, I believe, is down in this area, and then stretching down into Hazelwood. We're going to come up and you're going to see that certain parts, zooming in, certain parts of the Hill District are in, and most of these areas, the reason why we were not able to incorporate a larger geographic is because there's a zoning requirement that's tied to these. And so areas that are zoned primarily residential are not able to be captured into the enterprise zone. And we're going to move over. You'll see Bloomfield, Friendship, a significant part of East Liberty, Larimer, Homewood as well, and then coming down over to the West End. We've got some in South Side. And then, you know, stretching from the West End, really around that Sawmill Run Boulevard corridor, stretches all the way down. And then a little bit, I think this is Brownsville Road. And so some of that corridor as well. And then stretching up into Sheridan, Crafton Heights area, in Esplin, you'll see we've got some pockets there. And the cool thing here about this webpage is that you can just type in your address here, and it should be able to tell you if your location is in an enterprise zone. As an example, we'll do the URA's address. Okay. All right, well, that's not working, so that's very strange. But in any event, it should work. And if you're having any issues, you can always reach out to me. And I see that we've got a question in the chat. See if there's, I think this one is for Johnna. Who administers the Ohio River Towns Enterprise Zones, McKees Rocks, Stowe Township, and Neville Island?
Nobody. That zone expired 5 years ago. I think Craig asked that question. Hi, Craig. Good morning. I hope you're well. That expired back in 2017, Craig, and that has never been reapplied for.
Okay. And I think we are getting pretty short on time. Let's go back to the questions. Who does Homewood? So that would be the URA. So you would want to reach out to me and Johnna for certain, and to you know, kind of get started with the getting some background on your project.
Okay. Well, we only have 5 minutes. The other program I was going to mention is the historic tax credits. Really, that falls in line with the federal rules for historics. I'm not going to spend a ton of time going over that. But if your building qualifies as either a historic building individually listed on the National Registry, or as a contributing building to a historic district, you can potentially qualify. You do have to follow all of the Secretary of Interior standards. The PA program models the federal program. Those applications aren't due until October 1st of each year. They're open for just 1 month, October 1st through the 31st. And then it does take them, again, several months to review all those applications. There's only 5 million available. The federal program is a 20% tax credit, and the state is a 25% tax credit, so you can stack them. But the state is capped at 500,000, and because they're so limited funds, they do typically prorate them down for everybody. If you have very specific questions about the historic application process, please reach out. DCED is involved in the review and awarding of credits, but PHMC, the Pennsylvania Museum and Historic Commission, Historic Museum Commission, PHMC, is the also reviews all those applications and confirms, you know, with your part 1 that yes, it is a designated structure. Part 2, these are the plans, and they fit the historic model that is required. But yeah, lots of other programs in the state. You don't, you know, need to kind of stress you. The biggest thing we want you to kind of take away is there are resources here to help you. I'm a registered broker in the state. We're bonded with the state if you do have a tax credit or a program and you're looking to sell. But Johnna and James are both great resources for the application process and available to kind of help you and answer your questions. And you definitely need to have that meeting with Johnna. And Johnna, if you want to just talk for another minute on if you are doing, you know, Zoom meetings to see projects, if you're doing in-person meetings to see projects this year. I know time is going to get short real quick as people are submitting these here before May 31st, and my recommendation by May 27th. But
So I'm largely doing, online meetings to have project discussions. If you are contemplating an enterprise zone project, I really do need to hear from you by, let's call it, let's call it May 5th. I'd really like to have, heard from you by then to talk about your project and what you plan to do and provide you for some advice and guidance. I certainly can look at draft narratives, but again, I'm not going to look at draft narratives on May 28th, right? So, folks really need to be working on these projects, now and getting them ready to go. The city has done an outstanding job. All of our enterprise zones have done a really good job over the last couple of cycles, in spite of COVID and some other problems. So, as I said, we typically, when I started in this seat in 2015, we would get 6, 7, maybe 8 applications. We had 23 last year. So I personally am wedded to the enterprise zone applications because I think they are the job creators ultimately. But again, this falls under that neighborhood assistance tax credit program. And, our first obligation is to the nonprofits. But I really like to see strong enterprise zone applications. We've funded last year of 23, we funded 22 of them here in the Southwest. The one that we did not fund was simply somebody whose application just fell short on any number of levels. Believe me, I wanted to fund it, but we just couldn't get it there. So, so get your applications in, call me. Let me hear about your projects, and we're looking forward to it. We appreciate everybody's commitment.
Absolutely. And since we're running out of time here, just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. Again, I've sent contact information to everyone in the chat. My plan is to get this link posted onto the URA's website. And from there, I'll be working with URA's communications team to make sure that everyone that registered through Eventbrite receives a copy of the link in any event. And then from there, please feel free to contact myself, Johnna, Lindsay, with any questions as you're going through. Again, the sooner, the better. Time will fly. May 5th is really coming up pretty quickly. So please be sure to get in contact with Johnna by then, as well as me, really, as we'll have to work together to, get your application through. Really same with Lindsay as well. With that, I will thank my panelists for joining and really taking us through this fantastic tax credit program. Again, thank you all for your time and have a great rest of your day.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks, James. Thanks, Lindsay. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Thanks for your questions, folks.